Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Soulja Boy and, well, something you may or may not be surprised about. We're talking about this Soulja game flip. Take a look at this, and does this remind you of anything? It's currently priced at $436.50. And in my opinion, looks very similar to something like a Retroid Pocket Flip. I don't know here. I mean, this is just my opinion and probably the opinion of a lot of other people. But if we take a look at the Retroid Pocket Flip 2 handheld here on Retroid's website, it is priced significantly cheaper, $209 overall. And take a look at the screen on this one, specifically the wallpaper. I mean, just take a look at the whole device. And then take a look at the Soulja game here, the Soulja game flip. A lot more expensive and looks to be the exact same device. They didn't even change the wallpaper. I mean, on top of that, that's just for the black color. Let's take a look at ice blue here for the Soulja game flip, and take a look at the ice blue color for the Retroid Pocket Flip 2. Looks to me to be the exact same image. In fact, the exact same logo on the top right-hand corner too for both Soulja and Retroid. Very interesting overall. Take a look at the gray color here for the Soulja game flip, and the 16-bit color here for the Retroid Pocket. Ooh, a little bit different. 16-bit US, and the Soulja says, oh, look at that, 16-bit US. It looks to be the exact same image. But wait, there's even more. There's one last color to take a look at. So the last color here for the Soulja game flip is purple, which says GC on the top. And then heading over to Retroid here, and let's take a look at the GC colorway, which appears to be, again, the exact same. I've got no words. Honestly here, I'm wondering if someone actually orders one of these Soulja game flips, if then in turn Soulja Boy goes on ahead and orders a Retroid Pocket Flip 2 and then just rebrands the box and passes it off as their own. I really don't know here, but everything just seems to be the exact same. I mean, I don't know. These images all are the exact same. There's not really a whole lot of variation between the images on the two websites. And this is, well, it's definitely something. Now, for those who have been around for a while, you're probably well aware of Soulja Boy and their past history in the retro gaming handheld scene. I mean, there's an article here on Nintendo Life titled Soulja Boy Forced to Pull Knockoff Consoles. Website now redirects to Nintendo's 3DS store. And this was from back in 2018. If you're interested and wanted to read up more and learn more about it, like everything we talk about, links will be within the GitHub link in the bottom of the description below. I don't hide my sources. And if you've been around for a while as well, you're probably well familiar with the Mad Little Pixel videos taking a look at some of these consoles. They are very entertaining, at least in my opinion here. I mean, let me know if you remember these videos. I think Mad Little Pixel here has a pretty good way of doing some very effective console teardowns. And I'm trying hard to keep it together. I've seen this video, I couldn't tell you how many times, but it is absolute cinema. And furthermore here, Time Extension has a brand new article up titled Retroid confirms rapper Soulja Boy does not have permission to rebrand and sell its handhelds. Well, go figure. Now, I'm not going to lie here. I am really curious to see where this goes moving forward, because Retroid has pointed out that the Flip 2 has a US patent. And that could mean legal action is on the way. I would not be surprised to see legal action if this continues. But I would be surprised to see people pick up the Soulja game flip for $436.50 when the Retroid Pocket Flip 2 exists, is arguably the exact same thing and less than half the price, $209 versus $436.50. Wild. I'm wondering how many of these things are actually going to sell. And speaking about patents, next up we're talking about Nintendo and the US Patent Office. And listen to this headline over on VGC. US Patent Office Director orders re-examination of Nintendo's patent on summoning characters to make them battle. That is not good news for Nintendo, and I would argue that's really good news for Palworld. Now, if I'm not mistaken here, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this one a few months ago when the initial patent was granted, and myself and a lot of other people were wondering how that patent was even granted in the first place. And now over on GameSpray, it's being reported that this is a huge blow to Nintendo. Head of US Patent Office takes rare step to order re-examination of the summon sub-character and let it fight in one of two modes patent. I recommend checking out both the VGC and GamesFray articles for more information on the matter, and listen to this here. In a stunning development attributable to the public outrage that started here on GamesFray and reflecting concern over implications for the reputation of the US patent system as a whole, the USPTO director has personally ordered, at his own initiative, his organization to take another look at the patent. I would argue that this is pretty serious overall and not good for Nintendo, because this may be the first such order in more than a decade. And there may be prior art patents that are already filed, one from Konami in 2002 and also one from Nintendo itself in 2019. I am very curious to see what happens moving forward. If you want to guess, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And continuing to talk about Nintendo and arguably not great news, next up we're talking about the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 sales figures. And taking a look here, so the Switch 2 has been reported, and this is very recent numbers as of September 30th, of selling 10.36 million units, which is quite a bit. I'm not knocking that. And also the Switch has sold 154.01 million units. Again, a massive feat. However, a couple of things here. Sales are slowing down for the Switch 2, and they seem to have slowed to a crawl for the original Switch. So based on that information, I've seen headlines like this one here over on The Gamer. Nintendo just updated its Switch sale numbers, and it's never catching the PS2 in terms of best-selling console of all time. And this one over here on Time Extension. Sorry Nintendo, but it doesn't look like Switch will overtake the PS2 as the best-selling console of all time. Close to becoming Nintendo's best-selling console of all time though. So if we take a look at the data here on Nintendo's website in a little bit more detail in terms of quarterly sales data for units for the Switch and Switch 2, the Switch being in yellow and the Switch 2 being in red, we can see a decline here quarter over quarter for the Nintendo Switch. And for the Nintendo Switch 2, there's also a decline quarter over quarter, not near as steep as the Nintendo Switch, which is completely understandable. However, there is a decline between June and September. We're going to have to wait and see over the holiday season if these numbers do pick up. I would assume they would. I'm guessing Nintendo is also banking on it. And I'm wondering in terms of holiday deals or Black Friday deals if these will help out overall sales. I would guess so. But we're going to have to wait and see. Let me know your thoughts about this stuff. And on a quick side note here, for those wondering in terms of best-selling consoles of all time, the PS2 is still in number one with 160.63 million units sold. And I'm wondering if the Switch challenges the PS2 again, if Sony will find some more magic numbers to boost that number up. Who knows? But anyways, here it does seem that the Switch will surpass the DS probably within the month to become Nintendo's best-selling console of all time. And I am curious to see if momentum will continue for the Switch 2, or if it'll fall off a cliff. I'm curious to see if the Switch 2 will ever challenge the Switch. Let me know your thoughts about that. And speaking about consoles and handhelds, next up here we're talking about a PC handheld, the MSI Claw. If you've got an MSI Claw and you still use Windows on it, you might be excited to know that you may be getting the Windows full screen experience pretty soon. It may arrive in the coming months, and this will be the first non-Xbox branded device to get it. And furthermore, from my understanding here, this is already available to test out with the latest insider preview build of Windows 11, version KB5067115. So there you go. Now, while me personally is not the biggest fan of the current version of the Windows full screen experience, and I still think something like Abxylute is a much better experience overall, it is nice to see that more devices will be getting it, and hopefully Windows is still working out the bugs and making things even better for it. And I'm not a betting man, but I would bet that other Windows PC handhelds will probably be getting the full screen experience sooner rather than later. And speaking about full screen experiences, next up we're talking about UltraCam and Tears of the Kingdom. If you're unaware, UltraCam is an unofficial mod for Tears of the Kingdom, and there seems to be a brand new beta to give the camera a brand new view, or the player a brand new view of the game. So this is a video on YouTube from Last Breath, and it's titled New Top-Down Camera, UltraCam Beta 15, Tears of the Kingdom. Now, it is worth pointing out this is currently in beta. I've got no idea if and when it will be released, but taking a look, there are timestamps, and this seems to be heavily influenced by Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom. And I actually really like this viewpoint. Let me know your thoughts about it. Next up here, we're talking about Stop Killing Games, and I would argue this is a huge blow to the Stop Killing Games campaign in the UK, specific to the UK. However, I wouldn't be surprised to see this in other areas as well. So the Stop Killing Games petition was debated in UK Parliament, and if you wanted to hear it all, it is up on YouTube. And again, like everything we talk about, I'll drop a link in the description below within the GitHub link. But taking a look, it seems like the government is not going to do anything in the UK. Now, there were some interesting quotes from the debate. For example, as campaigners have rightly argued, if every copy of a book, film, or song were destroyed, we would see it as a cultural tragedy. We should view the loss of video games in the same light. Furthermore, in terms of ending support for games, listen to this. What we are seeing with games is different. It is as if someone bought that printer and then one day the manufacturer sent out a signal that deliberately stopped it from working at all, claiming it had reached the end of support. That is not support ending, it is obsolescence, which has an entirely different meaning. However, and the big however here, this is the response, and based on the way I'm reading it and the way I understand it, it does seem as if this is heavily influenced from a company or collection of companies. The government is sympathetic to the concerns raised, but we do also recognize the challenges in delivering this from the video games industry perspective. First, this would have a negative technical impact on the video game development. It is true that there are some games where it would be relatively simple to patch an offline mode after its initial release, but for games whose systems have been specifically designed for an online experience, this wouldn't be possible without major redevelopment. Requiring an end-of-life plan for all games would fundamentally change how games are developed and distributed. While that may well be the desired outcome for some campaigners, it isn't right to say the solutions would either be simple or inexpensive. The way I'm reading that is that seems heavily influenced by companies. Could be wrong with that. And it doesn't seem like the UK is really going to do anything. So based on this, I don't really have a whole lot of hope for the argument in the EU or anywhere else. We're going to have to wait and see on that. I would say at the very least, if they're not going to change practices, maybe just require an expiry date on games that maybe have a planned end of life, or a potential end of life, or games that aren't going to exist forever. While an expiry date really wouldn't solve everything, at a bare minimum here, it would give consumers the knowledge that what they're buying, the product or license, will be end of life at some point in time, and they won't be able to access it anymore. They'll realize it has a shelf life, and that becomes increasingly important the longer a product is out. I mean, buying a game with only a year left on the clock, that may have people realize what they're getting into, as opposed to buying a game with 5 years on the clock. We really should have that at a bare minimum. Let me know your thoughts. And speaking about video games, but arguably in a more positive light, next up here we're talking about Devil May Cry 5. And if you're a fan of Devil May Cry 5 and a fan of Android and a fan of playing Windows games on Android, you might be a fan of this video here. So this is a brand new video up on YouTube showcasing Devil May Cry 5 up and running on an Odin 2 Portal base using GameHub Lite. And the settings are within this video description. So taking a look here, the game is running at over 60 frames per second in some cases. And more often than not throughout the video, the game is running over 30 frames per second. Overall, even seeing the game just slightly over 30 frames per second, I would say it's completely playable, and that's coming from me. But taking a look here, it does look pretty good. Obviously 60 looks amazing, but at the same time here, even 30 and 43 it still looks pretty good. Let me know your thoughts. And speaking about hardware, next up here, we're talking about GPUs and taking a look at the Steam hardware and software survey for October. We talked about this one in a previous video, but taking a look here, there is a very interesting thing that I want to point out. The 5th most popular GPU on Steam and gaining in popularity is the GTX 1650. Not joking with you. Now, absolutely no surprise, NVIDIA is dominating the list in terms of overall popularity, with the 3060 being the most popular GPU. But I am very pleasantly surprised to see the 1650 still alive and kicking very well. Let me know your thoughts on this list. I'm also seeing AMD making some small strides forward in terms of popularity. And continuing to talk about hardware, next up we're talking about the Vectrex Mini, which has just launched on Kickstarter. Taking a look here, it's absolutely smashed its goals so far. It was asking for about €110,000 and currently has raised €535,000. So I'm guessing that this Kickstarter is going to be pretty successful. Now, taking a look at the tiers, and there's a bunch of different tiers here, but the cheapest Vectrex Mini that I can see is €149, and that's for the standard black. If you wanted a white Vectrex, it'll set you back €229. And speaking about Kickstarter, next up we're talking about Abxylute, and this is more of just a friendly heads up here, but Abxylute has announced that their glasses-free 3D PC gaming handheld, called the 3D One, will be hitting Kickstarter mid-November. And this one is powered by Intel. And last up here, we're talking about Nintendo DS emulation with MelonDS. And we've been talking about MelonDS quite a bit recently. In fact, I think we just talked about it a couple of days ago. Anyways, here, it is MelonDS's birthday. They have turned 9 years old. If you want to learn more about this one, I do recommend checking out the MelonDS forums. And again, like everything we talk about, link will be within the GitHub link below. And they say here version 1.1 will be released pretty soon with a nice bundle of fixes and improvements. So overall here, I'd say happy birthday MelonDS, and hopefully we see many more. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. You saw her yesterday anyway. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.